Darren, I need to get some chairs. I don't know. Should have been prepared. Prior planning.
Does he help insurance? You need help with insurance?
Dermatologists treat me like a cadaver in there. They sent me all over the place in there Thursday, and then I gotta go back this coming Thursday and get cargo.
Oh, jeez.
Nice. I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember. Okay, we're coming up to the witching hour.
I have extra chairs coming for anyone who's standing, so please be patient.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. Let me call the Oak Hill City Commission meeting for January the 22nd, 2024 in order at 6 p.m. Before we start, I have an announcement. This meeting is being streamed live on the city's YouTube channel, and the recording will be available after the meeting on the Commission's website. Those viewing the live stream will not be able to give input, post comments, call into the meeting, or otherwise interact with the Commission. Anyone wishing to provide input must physically come to the meeting at the Commission chambers. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. It is not intended that the members of the public will be visible in a live stream of a meeting. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcasted. Any members of the public who address the Commission will be heard on the live stream, and the audio of them speaking will be recorded. If we'll stand for a moment of silence, the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Gibson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Linlaw.
Here.
Commissioner McGee.
Here.
Commissioner Hyatt.
Here.
Commissioner Catagano.
Here.
I don't think we have any presentations this evening, so we'll move on to citizens' participation, non-agenda items.
Carrie Werning. Is this non-agenda? Is this non-agenda? Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie Werning, Indian Creek Road. Two things. First, I'd like to thank Joe for his newsletter, because without that, I never would have known that there's a charter review meeting coming up for our new workshop, and appreciate being informed of the schedule. The other thing I have is corrections to the minutes. If you want me to address it now, I will. If you want me to wait and address it when you go to review the minutes of the last meeting, that's up to you.
The minutes are an agenda item.
Okay?
We'll wait.
All right, I'll wait for that.
Thank you. Anyone else, non-agenda?
Joanne.
Drew Ann Welch, 222 Cypress Avenue. I want to thank you for the kind write-up, Joe, in your newsletter about the event that we held on Martin Luther King Day. That was absolutely stellar. For anyone who didn't see it, we were covered by the News Journal, and links are available to that. I'd also like to thank the commission and Jerome and all of the people in the community. I know there are so many of you. To name individually would take me an hour. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for St. Cincinnati Cemetery, for coming out, for supporting us, and for being able to see this event. I don't feel like it's an event we'll get to see very often, so it was wonderful to have so many of you here, and I appreciate the commission's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Anyone else? Aaron?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's move on to city administration reports. Mr. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Just wanted to add two things. The Volusia Forever, the closing for that property that we're being a part of to purchase, the closing has been pushed back to January 30th. And that's the second item is regarding the Lighthouse Cove property. Our city attorney has sent the letter to the HOA offering the property for sale. We're just waiting to hear back from them. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Next item up is consent agenda, minutes 1/8/2024. Carrie, I'm sorry.
Okay, couple of corrections, where it's talking about the ball field. It doesn't say the amount that was approved for the fencing and the electrical, which is $14,670, nor does it say that the funds were going to come out of the parks budget. And under Public Works, the moving of the dumpster was reported as being $2,000, but the correct amount for moving the dumpsters was $2,000, but for adding fences and gates for both Mary DeWeese and an extra $700 for the gates at Nancy Cummings. So the total amount was $2,700 that was approved, and also the fact that that money was supposed to come out of the parks budget. And those are the only two corrections I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other changes? Need a motion?
I make a move with the additions of the changes for the funding that, money that Terry just mentioned. We approved the minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? No further discussion? Call for the vote?
Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Munell,
Yes.
Commissioner McKee,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner Catagano.
Yes.
The next on the agenda is city attorney, non-agenda items. Any? None? Okay. We now move into the city planner, and this portion of the city commission meeting is now a quasi-judicial proceeding. Before we start with the presentation from the planner, any excommunication with
Ex parte
ex
communication.
parte communication needs to be revealed by the commissioners. I'll start. I think it was 2 months ago. I met with the project manager for Lagoon Mist, Adams Homes, and a couple of other representatives. During that discussion, I was disappointed that Lagoon Mist didn't hook up into the sewer, which was 300 feet from their subdivision, and they put in septic tanks. Also, during that meeting, the other fellows wanted to know, and forgive me, I didn't write down their names. They wanted to know if there was any updated information about Garden Street, any complaints that I had heard of. 2 months ago, I had not heard anything from anybody. Anybody else?
I received
Emails.
a number of
emails.
emails that I think we all got.
We all got
All
them.
right, so but those are, public record and they're into my Oak Hill City account. So I've not had any conversations with anyone.
I talked to pretty much everybody on my street about it and sent an email to Gerald Syra. I hope I'm saying that right. Is that- Sear?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. And I also spoke with the engineer. He was parked in front of my house, and so I walked out and spoke to him.
Okay. With no further, we can move on to the presentation.
You want me to
No.
give like a summary first, or would you would like to go straight to
I'll
presentation?
turn it over to you,
Okay.
city attorney.
Me only the question. I just wanted to kind of give an update of where we are in this process. Some people may not be here, been here for other hearings. But when a property owner comes to the city and they want to develop a piece of property, the first thing that we look at is to say, is our comprehensive plan, which is a requirement of state law, allow the type of developments that are being contemplated? And do our development regulations, as worded, allow the development that's being contemplated? Because that's very important, because if we have to amend our comprehensive plan, or if we have to change our development regulations, basically our rules, then that's a policy decision, a planning decision made by this body. And this body has substantial discretion at that point on how they plan for the growth of the community. If there's not a need to change the comprehensive plan or the land development regulations, in essence, our rules allow what is being proposed, then the question is, do they have to rezone to an existing zoning to accommodate that project? And in this particular case, that was the situation. There was no need to amend our existing rules for this project, but they needed to rezone from their current zoning to what's something called residential plan unit development. Once you get past the planning stage and once you go to the rezoning stage and thereafter, as the mayor mentioned, it's quasi-judicial. It's not legislative anymore. It's quasi-judicial, which means the decision the commission makes has to be supported by substantial competent evidence. If it was legislative, it goes to what's called a fairly debatable standard, almost an abuse of discretion standard that they have. Unless they clearly abuse their discretion, they are not the courts will not overturn the decision. But when you're not setting policy or setting rules, you're applying your rules to a set of facts. What happens when you have an application in quasi-judicial settings, you fall under a different standard. Quasi-judicial means now whatever decision they make has to have substantial competent evidence. The rezoning of this property has already been approved. So under our rules, the next step is development plan review. And that's where we are now. And I'll tell you, many jurisdictions don't bring this stage to public hearings. They're actually handled administratively by staff because it's very technical review. It's engineering and planning analysis. So some jurisdictions just handle this administratively. Our codes make it public hearings. And because of the size of the project, it's considered a major development plan, which means there's a preliminary plan, then a final development plan. Both plans go to the planning board. Where we're at right now is the preliminary development plan has gone to the planning board, and this body's received a recommendation. We are now at this body reviewing and making a final determination on the preliminary development plan. If approved, the developer has 6 months to submit a final development plan. That will go to the planning board, who will review and make a recommendation to this body, and then they will also this body will make a final determination. So if approved tonight, there's still 2 more public hearings that will have to occur on the final development plan, one with the planning board, one with this body. And then there's also a subdivision or a plat approval. That also requires a public hearing. Now, the developer could pursue that with the final development plan approval, but they could, if they don't have it ready, it may come separately. So there's at least 2 more hearings if approved tonight, but could be more than that depending on how they submit their plat approval. So where we're at tonight is the final approval of the preliminary development plan. And so the question is, obviously, you have to have substantial competent evidence, and you have the quasi-judicial procedures policy that you all have adopted defines those terms for you. If you have any questions, let me know. But what we're looking at is the detailed review. Our code outlines what has to be reviewed at this stage, and it's the burden of the applicant to meet all those requirements. They have to present substantial competent evidence to you that they have met all those requirements. If that burden is met, then the question is any opposition present substantial competent evidence that they haven't complied with these requirements. And so we're looking at issues such concurrency issues, traffic, stormwater, water, sewer, traffic. I don't know if I said traffic. There's also requirements with our other requirements, tree planting, setbacks, buffers, open space, all those things still have to meet all those requirements. At the end of this, you can approve or you can deny or you can approve with conditions. The conditions would be saying there's some things we want you to fine tune or address in your final plan when it comes back. So those are your 3 options on the approval tonight. So if it's, obviously if we're doing an approval with conditions or denial, we need to detail out what the basis is for those. So with that, you can go ahead and proceed. Unless anybody has any questions.
Does anyone have any questions before we proceed? Seeing none? Kimberly and Horn, if you wish to start, please do so.
Hello, my name is Heather. I do work for Kinley Horn and am representing as planner for the city of Oak Hill. So I'm going to do my best to summarize for you what is in that staff report, as well as for the audience. The applicant is requesting a preliminary development plan approval for the Oak Hill subdivision, which has also been formerly known as the Garden Street RPUD. The property, as identified in the staff report, is currently zoned Residential Planned Unit Development, also known as RPUD. This zoning was approved through ordinance number 2021-02, permitting the development of a single-family residential subdivision with a maximum of 134 lots, consistent with the low-density residential future land use designation, which allows up to 4 units per acre. The applicant is proposing a 132 single-family lot subdivision with the neighborhood featuring a central common area, sidewalks, and storm drainage. All lots within the development do meet the RPUD zoning requirements that are set forth in ordinance number 2021-02 in terms of lot size, perimeter setbacks, and required street frontage. Also consistent with the conceptual development plan approved in this ordinance, the development proposes 1 point of ingress and egress that is up against US Highway 1, as well as a secondary access point to Gain Street, which is restricted to emergency fire access, as well as pedestrian and bicycle traffic. The fire marshal has reviewed and approved these points of access subject to specific conditions, such as the provision of a Knox box and regular maintenance of the secondary access. The staff report details the criteria by which a preliminary development plan should be reviewed. The proposed development, as described therein, is consistent with the existing surrounding development, which is substantially low-density residential. The development has been reviewed by the city's Development Review Committee, which consists of Kimley Horn, Mead and Hunt, Volusia County Utilities, and Volusia County Fire Prevention Bureau. Volusia County Utilities have confirmed that water and wastewater are available to serve the development. The applicant will be required to get an official letter of concurrency during the review of the final development plan. The development will maintain runoff within its boundaries as the site will be graded to drain to stormwater collection inlets that flow to on-site dry retention ponds. The project will also not negatively impact the citywide required recreation acreage, and it is meeting the requirements of open space detailed by section 42-462 of the city's code, which discusses requirements for RPUD developments. The development is, on balance, consistent with the comprehensive plan, especially specific sections as were identified in the staff report. This development, as required, was reviewed by the PLDRC at a properly noticed meeting on December 21st, 2023, where they recommended approval of it based on the findings of fact included in the staff report. You, as the City Commission, after completion of all quasi-judicial procedures, shall vote to either approve the PDP, approve it with modifications, or deny it if, even with reasonable modifications, it cannot meet the requirements of the city's regulations as discussed. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions?
Yeah, one of the things is the units per acre, I believe in our low density, that's 4, right? But with your lot sizes, that's 5, or, I mean, it's less than, it's 5 to 8. Okay, so I don't get where there's not quarter acre lots there.
So the density that's approved is up to 4 units per acre, and the site is 33.5 acres, which would permit that up to 134 units. They're only proposing 132, so it comes in a little bit below the allowed density for that future land use designation.
So the density requirements are over the entire area, counting the open space.
Yes.
The lots in the surrounding area are at a minimum of 11,700 square feet. Because it's zone R1, pretty much all the way around that project. So
Yes,
I'm just bewildered at that statement that this is somehow compatible with that. If it was compatible, why would the buffers be required?
The buffers are primarily required against the roadways. They are required against the other properties as well, simply because it's a kindness to neighbors.
Well, the ordinance says that inconsistent land uses. The buffer's required where there's inconsistent, where it's not consistent with the surrounding area. So that's how I took it. Like there's one along Gain Street. It's 10 feet wide. I guess I don't even know how that number came up, as far as the width of it is concerned. And I guess to the north it's only 5 feet. But then on Route 1, where there is no houses next to it, it's 15 feet. And then I don't think that Lagoon Mist even has a buffer, or if it is, it's 5 feet.
Yes, as part of the rezoning of that, they would have negotiated those buffers that they put into there. Having the buffers along the roadways is a protection also for the residents within the subdivision from the traffic that is going to be along US Highway 1 and Gain Street as well. The consistency between the developments in the area is that not all of the properties, the majority of the properties surrounding the subject property are low-density residential in nature, as is this one. The future land use designation did not change. And though some of them are larger home lots, there are also some smaller lots in development in that area.
Either 50 foot or 10 or 40 foot
By appearances, yes.
by appearances. That's a bit of a stretch, wouldn't you say? And to be like in the same, category as an R1, why would they have different zonings if it was?
The purpose for an RPUD zoning is to allow flexibility in the development. So it is what is allowing them to get slightly smaller lot sizes in certain areas and thus providing probably more common open space as well for the neighborhood.
And you said that the buffer widths were negotiated. Who did you negotiate that with?
I unfortunately was not part of that discussion. I'm strictly speaking in terms of the typical process of a rezoning.
Well, as a representative of the people in this room, I would have loved to have been a participant in that negotiation, but I didn't get called. I missed that call.
When the zoning was being approved, the ordinance itself, it would have come before your commission for review and approval.
Mr. Catagano, Commissioner, you were a part of that over here on the street. We had that discussion 2 years ago, and that was the buffer size that was agreed upon 2 years ago when we had all this. So, and you were a part of the residents then.
Yeah, residents.
Okay, so you weren't a fisher then, but we had that discussion with
This
the
is-
buffer
this is
size
before us
and the
now.
wooded size in there 2 years ago. So, and that was the agreement that was reached with the
To protect
residents.
the residents.
No,
2 years
not
ago.
with- Not with the residents.
We
Might have
can
been
dig up the
amongst you
records
guys.
in there.
I
It
have all the
was.
records right there, sitting right in front of me here.
So,
Well, let me help a little guidance here. A lot of these development terms, when you have an RPUD, you create a development code for that piece of property. Otherwise, what you do is you fall back to our standard land development regulations. The rezoning of that, you see the issues about, how many units are allowed out there, the buffer, the setback, all those things were part of that development regulated, the rezoning to PUD. And there's a development agreement and a preliminary site plan attached to those. Those went through the public hearing process and were approved by this commission. So that's really the development code we then look at to apply to this applicant as submitting their development plan. Is it consistent with the RPUD that's already been approved? So that's the development code for this property.
And that came under ordinance 2021-02.
I remember having this discussion. We went back and forth, and that's also where we had the discussion about the access onto Gain Street.
Right, the
North Gain
residents,
Street.
the residents
And
didn't
the
want a
residents
street
did
going
not
in there,
want-
so
did not want
in
that
order
on
to,
there. Right,
So
so
that
that
meet
was,
the
that
fire
was
why we
part of
limited
the
it, right.
trade-off. I remember that conversation. One of the things it's not clear to me in here, but it states in here that the driveways in each home will have parking for 2 vehicles,
Yes, sir.
okay? Where is the street wide enough to park another vehicle on the street and still allow traffic to go through there?
Are you concerned about there being 3 cars?
Yes.
Is that why? Okay, the streets are meeting the standards that the city or the county set forth for the roadways. I can pull up the plan page if you give me just a moment and look at what width that is.
I believe it was 24 feet was the width of the road.
Standard roadway.
Standard roadway.
So with 24 feet, there would certainly be room for people to park on one side and still bypass. There would not be room most likely if people both park in the exact same location on either side, which is pretty standard in any subdivision.
So is that something we negotiate with you guys or the HOA later on down the road, that there's parking on one side of the street, and, I mean, how does that process
At
work?
the end of the day, that would be under the HOA's purview, I would imagine, because all they're strictly required to provide is a certain amount of parking that meets the city's code, which they're doing with their development.
Okay,
The HOA could probably say no parking in the street
they could, yeah. I
and
would
no
just-
parking on the grass.
Right, yeah,
I've lived in an HOA.
yeah. And the other question I had was the fire department, the safety people discussed about, can they get through between two homes that are 10 feet apart in the event of an emergency or whatever?
Are you referring to the emergency fire access part or something
No, I'm
separate?
talking about there's a fire in the back of somebody's house or their
Yeah,
back
they would-
porch or.
They would walk through it like they would in any other
Okay, yeah,
location. It's just,
so
yeah.
that's
There's-
sufficient.
There's no room for vehicles to go through.
Right, you can't get a
just
truck through
you
there.
take your hose out
You can
and
get the hose and the.
flick it
fire-
out and off you go, yeah.
Okay, all right, that was my, was there sufficient room
Yeah.
to do that, haul their equipment to, other than they can't get a truck? Yeah,
Mhm.
understand that. Okay.
They're responsible for their own stormwater management.
Yes, ma'am. They are responsible for their own stormwater management. They have submitted documents that show that they will maintain all of their stormwater on site. It will be collected into on-site dry retention ponds and processed naturally from there.
Okay, thank you.
I had another question on the wildlife side of the house. There's some blue herons that nest or roost in that area. Is there a state regulation or county that dictates how those roost sections are handled? Or
They're not.
how you guys work that?
So to an extent, yes, is the answer. The applicant is working with the wildlife to have the site inspected for anything on site that is a protected species, which would need to be relocated or handled otherwise. They will have to get all correct permits in place prior to any development beginning. And we have already identified that there are some gopher tortoises on site, and I know some of the residents have shared that there were blue herons as well. So they are working with, I believe, Cardor Environmental Services. Am I crazy?
Yes.
Great.
Do we have anybody that, from the citizens that wishes to ask Kimberly and Horn anything? If not, we'll move on to the applicant.
I would ask one question.
Excuse me. You are an attorney, I assume.
Well, yes,
Did you file a list of who you represent?
yes.
He did.
If you will come to the podium and ask your question, state your name for the record. Thank you.
I'm Tanner Andrews, bar number 21426. And the question was, in case of heavy rain, how is the water going to get from these outer retention ponds to the big central retention pond?
I would think that'd be a question for St. John's Water Management. I don't think she can answer that question.
And she can.
As the planner reviewing, that is not something I can answer. The applicant may be able to provide you some additional information if they're a welcome management district in terms of permitting.
Does the applicant want to proceed?
That was our opportunity to say something. You wanna step up? So that's her pointed question?
My name is Joseph Schofield. I'm with Alliant Engineering, civil engineer consultant for Garden Street Communities, the developer and the landowner. Thank you for the question. So the project has an environmental resource permit from St. John's River Water Management District. That permit does include some emergency overflow pipe connection to the Central Park So we have our own stormwater management facilities to serve the new residents and the new lots, and meeting all the state water quantity and water quality requirements in those stormwater management facilities. So to protect the neighbors and new homeowners here, should there be a storm event that we do not model, we do not permit, the agencies do not require, and you get a big inundation of stormwater due to a hurricane or whatever the case may be, then that will overflow into the nice 7+ acre central park that the developer is going to provide to the community as a benefit. So all stormwater is going to be retained internal to the project, and basically what you'll have is, in effect, a land barrier around the project, and all the stormwater that drops onto this property, it's all going to be completely contained within the property and never leave, have no point discharge to any of the neighbors. So the project is, the built product will be a benefit to the neighbors. So some of those areas that collect a lot of water and discharge off-site and have flooded some areas in very, very large rain events, that will no longer happen, at least due to Garden Street's property, because we're going to build up that perimeter with lots, trap and retain all of that stormwater inside of the area, and have a nice kind of common park space in the middle that is accessible from Gaines and will be accessible from US 1. We'll cut in some nice aesthetic ponds to support the heron population we know to be out there, and preserve as much of that canopy in that central park area as we can, to the extent that, so long as the contract can get in there, we can build, have some nice mulch paths or something like that. So I think it's a great project. It's a good opportunity for the neighbors to enjoy some improvements. And this goes way beyond the question, but these are things we've heard a lot, so I'll just go ahead and address some of them now, try to get ahead of these things. But that's the long answer to the question.
I have one other thing, Mayor.
You have the floor.
About the herons. In our comprehensive plan, at policy 1.4.2, species of flora and fauna listed in the conservation element of the city of Oak Hill, endangered, threatened, and species of special concern shall be protected by inclusion of their habitat or vegetation communities in the future land use map series. Any proposal must be accompanied by a mitigation study prepared in accordance with governing Volusia County ordinances in effect at the time, in addition to any requirements by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and Florida Fish and Wildlife or other governmental bodies with jurisdiction. And my question is, so is the great blue heron rookery considered to be a species of special concern, or because they are protected by the Migratory Bird Act?
Yeah, but only the Migratory Bird Act, I think. I don't think they're other.
Yeah, I don't believe they're an endangered species.
No, they're not endangered.
It doesn't just say that. It says endangered, threatened, or a species of special concern. And my question is, do those birds fall under any of those categories?
I'm like you, I can't answer
Have to
that.
ask FWC.
We should, because according to this ordinance, we should have that on our future land use map, that, the herring, because they come back there every year, year after year.
Does
Everybody, that
the
lives in-
applicant have any comment in reference to the birds?
I'll step up. And actually, there's a sign up here. Am I allowed to use this sign?
Certainly. As long as it's not profanity.
My name is Gerald Sear. I'm an employee of Garden Street Communities. We're a Southeast Regional Development company, and I represent our company at this meeting. We actually, and I forget the lady's name, that had identified herons on the property. And
Mellinger.
She had sent us some video. I passed the video on to the environmental consultant. We have to meet all state, municipal, federal regulations for developing a project of any of this type. That includes stormwater, It includes all environmental concerns, also addressing any flora, fauna, etc. As mentioned earlier, there are gopher tortoises on the property. Procedurally, what happens with gopher tortoises, we have to have a study, identify the tortoises. What the state permits and supports is FWC issues us a permit. The permit is to relocate tortoises. That's how tortoises are dealt with. Based on the review, and this was simply a fact that my environmental person had stated related to the herons. I'm not an environmental specialist. My understanding with herons is that they're not an endangered species, but there may be some obligation if there are nesting birds there at the time that we may have to do some special procedure associated with that. On this property, and this is pretty unique, we're preserving, I think, 7 acres of the property on the inside. I think out of that 7 acres, there will be approximately 5 acres that will be undisturbed, which is pretty unusual. Usually to meet the engineering design requirements in order to collect all the stormwater on the property, you end up being unable to preserve any of the natural environment that's on a property. In this case, the engineers worked pretty hard to try and preserve any of those areas. So I believe we will already be preserving some of the natural habitat that exists there. Beyond that, my understanding is we don't have any specific obligation. If there is more to address and folks would like us to address, and I can bring my environmental person here to explain any further the rules and the regulations that we're obligated to follow, then I'm happy to do that. But at this stage, we're following all of our requirements that are driven by the state. Any applications that we file, they all go to FDEP, Florida Fish and Wildlife, FWC, they cover that. The state covers it, St. John's Water Management District. They review all of our application, all of our permitting aspects. So I like to fish. I'm an outdoor person. I'm pro clean water, clean right-of-ways. I have no desire to harm any animals, any plants. We're just following process and procedure that has been outlined for us to follow in accordance with the state and federal guidelines and municipal guidelines. That's all I got.
Before you leave, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I actually have 2 questions. In the stormwater engineering, did y'all consider low-impact development devices?
You mean like impervious type devices? Or
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Like porous concrete or
Yes.
parking areas?
Your curbing, so it vents into that 7 acres? Might want to look into that.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Are there any
I can
design components that could be considered as part of that, or?
Could be. I can speak to that for a minute if you like.
Okay, certainly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Was there another question
Yeah, we were
engineering?
going-
Okay.
I did have a follow-up on that, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay.
About the birds.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I can address this to you or the commission, I guess, is this is a rule that's unique to Oak Hill. And it says that the vegetated communities that these birds habitat in need to be indicated on the future land use map. And I'm asking, have we done that?
I can't tell you.
We do want, it's our goal.
I don't recall
to
it
try to
ever coming
comply
up.
with,
Well, I've been here for 12 years.
Well, I mean, you would think that we would want to comply with our own rules, right? And here it is, so I think that's a valid question that somebody should figure out. I mean, I don't know, I would figure it out if there was some way for me to do it. So who do I look to?
City administrator?
There you go.
Whoa.
Mr. Adams?
Okay.
Again, Joe Schofield. So to your question about kind of alternate improvements relating to, environment and stormwater runoff. This development, we did not, and I would, since we were proposing dry ponds, which are very efficient from a nutrient removal perspective, and everything being contained within the property, typically a development would have some point discharge off-site to a ditch or an adjacent property or waterway or what have you. Those would be scenarios where you're discharging to outstanding flowing waters or some sensitive area. Those are good candidates to really apply some additional focus and look for those alternative engineering and construction materials and products and things like that. This project, I would say there would not be a meaningful benefit because everything's contained on site one. Two, the dry ponds, which function very efficiently from a nutrient loading and removal perspective. So we did not entertain any of those items.
My second question is this fire road. From a first responder standpoint, let me ask you, because in the original, the discussion was, and you all made consensus this with the citizens on Gaines Street, to not have a throughway, but the fire department requires in and out. So you came up, or mutually agreed, to put up a gate and a lock. Is that still the plan?
Yes, sir. That was the requirement, was to provide emergency access to Gaines with a gate and a fire department compliant lock.
Here's my take on this, because I was a first responder in past years. Have to get out of my car, unlock that gate, swing that gate open, get back in my car, and drive to wherever the emergency is. And if it's some crazy person shooting people, every minute counts. I want that done away with. I think it's the most ridiculous request that the citizens have made on this development. There's more serious things about this development, but that's the one that I have a problem with. And it's just my personal opinion and my experience with dealing with gates. Gated communities were the worst thing when got a call to go to one. And you had to wait until you found somebody that could tell you what to go.
Clocks on, I was real familiar with that because this was.
I just wanted to bring to your attention that back in at the PLDRC meeting in 12/17/2020, and Con Evans was addressing the PLDRC, she talked to them about asking them about flipping the houses around on Gaines Street. But during that conversation, she said, and Mr. Van said, I heard it is the entrance and exit off of Gaines Street. And Miss Evans says, oh yes. And she said and she's talking about Mr. Blanc, said that he'd pull that at Gaines Street if it became an issue. And that was before any PLDRC, that was before that was the very first PLDRC meeting. So it wasn't negotiation. He was willing to do that when he submitted his application. Just for the record, I just want to make sure that's perfectly clear to everybody, because what you said was not exactly accurate.
I disagree with you, Commissioner.
Well, this is the
Cardona.
transcript.
I was here when that happened.
You weren't.
I was
You were
sitting
not
here.
at the
We
PLD.
had the dialogue in there.
I'm talking about you were at the PLDRC meeting on 12/17/22. You weren't.
No, I wasn't at
I
that
know you
meeting.
weren't.
I'm talking about the meeting in 21 where we had that discussion that the residents on North Gaines
There it
agreed
is,
to
right
that.
there in front of you, right
That's,
there.
you're
There's the
talking about
transcript.
3 years earlier.
Right, that's right. That is exactly right.
So, okay.
It has nothing to
Thank
do
you,
with us
Joe.
negotiating anything.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner. Let's move on. Is there any other questions, Commissioners, for the applicant?
Can we check?
Yes.
I only have one regarding flooding, and that is Diana Batchelder. Please state your name and address, please.
Diana Batchelor, 303 Ezra Road. On the north side, I get the brunt of most of the flooding. So, but Joe seemed to answer most of my questions that I had. He had suggested he had come over to my place, which was nice, thank you. And he said he'd raise the backyards up. But all I could think of that I would be in a deeper hole. But now he says something about drainage, so I pray and hope that might work. It's not guaranteed, I'm sure, but that was what was worrying me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Tanner?
Since you represent several people, we'll give you 10 minutes, sir.
All right, if I don't use it all up, can I save it for the next trip?
We'll oblige you.
Let me just start by laying out the rules that I'm going to try to follow here. With one of these requests or applications, the burden is, of course, on the applicant to prove the compliance with all the necessary elements. Once that is done, if that is done by competent substantial evidence, then the city has or moves to what we'll call grace. That is, you can say, yes, this is good for the city, we're going to do it, or no, this is not good for the city. Perhaps we don't want the kind of development where they come in and say, okay, technically, if we wait till the birds fly, we can push over their trees. That's something that's a matter of grace. Now, when we talk about competent substantial evidence, there are two key points to that: competence and substance. Competence meaning that if somebody wants to say, yes, we comply with the sewage requirements, there is adequate pipe capacity, that would be testimony. Some engineer would come in and say, yeah, there's a pipe of such a size, and we have 130 postage stamp sized lots, and those will generate so many gallons with such and such a peak. That would be competent testimony from an engineer that can give that. The substance would be where he said or goes through all that, rather than saying just, I'm an engineer, it works. That's a conclusion, that's not substance. If you don't hear somebody come up and give you substance, then you haven't gotten what you need. With that in mind, let me start in the question of drainage. The applicant has told us that the water in a heavy storm is going to go down through pipes from these outer retention ponds into the central pond, or ponds that will be dug out. And I'm going to assume that that's going to work. I'm not a pipe expert. But having heard that, and having seen the same thing, the same map you all saw, or I'm assuming you all saw it, with the ponds dug out there in the middle, and the pipes going to them, that's not open space. That's where we go in, push over all the trees, and dig out ponds. And open space, by the comp plan definition, is undeveloped land. You've developed it. You've pushed over the trees and scooped out the sand or soil. In fact, I think they're going to use that for grading the lots. So you haven't got evidence that supports open space. The comp plan, as you heard, calls for some attention to the flora and fauna. Well, the developer expert told us what kind of attention we're going to get. We hope the birds fly away. We'll push over all the trees, dig out the pond, and maybe when they come back next year, they'll find some other town to land in. That's not what your comp plan says you're supposed to do. And remember, the comp plan rules over the ordinance. So the comp plan tells us open space should be undeveloped and should be accessible to all. When we look at the maps and their open space calculations, we're counting side yards as open space. That's not accessible to all the residents of the subdivision. Assuming always that nobody puts a shed anywhere in the subdivision, the owners of each lot still have exclusive use and ownership of their little 5-foot strip on each side of the house. And when I talk about the little 5-foot strips, which is the setback, you know, on a 40-foot lot with a 5-foot setback, that makes a house no more than 30 feet wide. Now that used to be called a shotgun. You know, you have a straight hall down the middle and a bunch of rooms off the side. And yes, it was a good economical housing development plan back in the day. I don't think that's what the comp plan contemplated today. And it's certainly not compatible. 40 and 50-foot lots are not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Remember that the ordinance and the comp plan call for compatibility with the surroundings. What you heard was that it's single family, quote, compatible with the single family nature of Oak Hill. But there's a difference between single families on quarter acre and up lots and single families on 4,400, which is basically a 1/10 of an acre lot. And you didn't hear any evidence that that would be compatible. The last thing, which may turn out at some point to be a first concern, is, remember I was talking about what we needed for sewer? That we needed somebody to tell us that they've looked at the pipes, they've calculated the flows, and that they're trained to do that. Didn't hear a bit of that tonight. And if we don't address that, it could get pretty smelly. Okay. Have any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Karen, do we have anybody else?
No, sir.
Any questions from the commission?
You know, back when we were,
Mr. Catagano, you have the
Right.
chair.
well, we were, I guess it was, what, 3 years ago, Steve? Is that what you said when we were
21.
doing this before, right?
Yes.
That issue about the open space being available to all citizens came up, and that was one of the issues that I was having with Mr. Klepper when he said that Mr. Patterson no longer stood behind his report, which turned out not to be true. But he, I don't know, did we ever figure out, because that never did resolve itself.
Yes, because there was confusion over what the comprehensive plan refers to open space, but there's no percentage in it. When you go to our land development code, which implements the comprehensive plan, we break open space into two types, common open space and open space. Open space, both are defined, open, and both have percentages. The common open space is what is more akin to what the leisure activities, recreational use that is referred to in the comprehensive plan. And that number is, I believe, 35% of the open space requirement. The open space requirement is, I believe, 60%. So you got to take 35% of 60% to see how much is common open space. And now open space, if you just think a little bit logically here, We are not going to have a regulation last very long if we say that 60% of somebody's land has to be accessible by everybody else. And I bet nobody sitting up here has 60% of your land accessible by the public. I can assure you that's a constitutional taking. That's not a reasonable interpretation. So if common open space is defined, it doesn't exclude developed land, it excludes structures. But grass areas, things that have been developed but do not have physical structures on them are included within open space, because what's excluded is, let me look up the definition here real quickly. Open space means that portion of land or water not used for buildings, street right-of-ways, or off-street parking or loading areas. So you exclude those areas, everything else is open space. That means front yard, backyard, side yards is all open space. So do you want to add anything about the open space and common open space?
Yeah, I was just going to add that.
What?
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to add that there is an open space exhibit that is an attachment in the staff report, which does identify their common area open space as the central area, and that it will be 35% of the required open space at 7 acres. Otherwise, they are having other open space that is going to total to 20.1 acres, which is 60% of the project area, and yes, does include the grassy areas, walkways, yards like he mentioned. That's a more property-specific requirement, not meant to be commonly open, such as people could trespass upon it.
That's this one. It gives the reference to the ordinance.
That was not in my agenda pack, by the way. My staff report, that document was not included in that. I just wanted to look at your. So I guess the 1.44 is no longer.
I didn't say that. You've already raised this issue and you lost. You raised this in court. Court ruled on this all open space and common open space was already addressed in court. And as long as they meet what the ordinance says, they've complied with our ordinances and our comp plan.
And this is the ordinance or no?
The ordinance is the RPUD. That's the ordinance.
So this doesn't have any meaning, I guess, or?
No, it is. It's the comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan is implemented by our land development regulations, which are our ordinances. So you can't ignore the ordinances when you read the comprehensive plan. That's what implements it.
Could I add just a little bit more?
Sure.
In terms of the comprehensive plan, especially when it's talking about open space requirements, it's frequently talking about the city's responsibility to provide recreation and open space to the community. So even the assessment in the staff report that looks at the recreation requirement of 6 acres per 1,000 people, that's a burden upon the city itself. The project still does not negatively impact this or cause the city to need to expand any recreation due to the excess recreation that the city already provides. The developer themselves is held both to their RPUD as well as section 24-462 of your code, specifically letter H, which does define the percentages he was already talking about of 60% of open space being required, 35% of which must be common.
And I guess number 7 out of that one says that retention ponds can't be used as a common open space.
Number 7 out of what one?
That ordinance that you just, H7, I guess, would be, just going by memory.
I do have one thing in regards to the attorney for the residents and your explanation of the ability of the subdivision to be able to handle water and sewer issues. I'm not sure if you read this page on the development plan, but it's on page 6, article 7, paragraph B, and it says, establish the Oak Hill Conservancy Review and Certification Procedure, CRCP, to ensure that the issuance of the final development orders will not result in the degradation of the level of service for any facility located within the city. And it goes on to say that the Volusia County Utilities has reviewed the proposal and has established that they do have the capacity of water and sewer for this project. So it was actually addressed, and
Oh, I thought I may not have been clear. I said that, yes, they have the plant capacity, just as they say.
right.
I'm just saying that we haven't seen any evidence of how to get it from the 132 up to the plant.
Okay, that would be the underground pipes, I would guess, but that's all I have.
Anything else, Joe?
I don't have that particular code section in this binder, so I will do my best to look it up while the conversation continues.
It says that the retention ponds are not to be counted as common open space. So where I was going, I'm just going by memory, but it might be slightly worded different, but that's the essence of it, I would say. And so I'm wondering about in that illustration there, the aesthetic ponds, and I guess you're calling it that there. In the event of an overflow, all of a sudden that would be a retention pond, no longer an aesthetic pond. Would that disqualify it as being common open space due to, as per our ordinance?
Given that they're designed as dry ponds, not standard retention ponds that are always wet, I wouldn't say that it violates that because the water is not going to be maintained in there for a long period of time.
So
However, I'm also
sometimes
not
yes
an
and
engineer.
Sometimes no? Is that what your answer is?
My answer is that it is compatible with the code.
And I will get you, there was an email discussion I had on this particular question when this project was first developed, and I sent an email to Con, so I'll see if I can, I don't know if I can find it tonight, but I'll get it to the commission that addresses your exact question.
I remember we went back and forth on the dry versus wet.
And I remember
the original submission had a giant pond in the middle, and they were counting the whole thing as open space.
And I remember
and
as common open space, and I believe my recollection is I said you can't do that.
Yeah, it was actually our attorney that said that, but you ended up agreeing with him.
No, I think I did it before he did.
Right.
But I'll look and see. I can't
There you
remember.
go.
I'll look and see.
Comments, questions from the commissioners?
No, I think I got all my questions answered.
Mr. McGee?
Nope.
You good?
I've asked.
Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, nothing right now.
Mr. Joe? Okay. The last thing that's available is a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for preliminary development plan of the Oak Hill subdivision.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Comments from the commissioners? Nobody speaking up? Comments and questions from the citizens? Hopefully you filled out a form on this. Come up to the front, sir. I will give you 3 minutes.
Thanks. Don Terrell, 315 North Gaines. Just 3 questions. First of all, what is the federal, I don't expect the answers, but I at least want to pose the questions to the commission. What is the federal flood zone designation for the new properties? And if somebody knows, that's fine. Secondly, whatever that flood zone is, will it change the flood zone characteristics of the surrounding properties? Because that could impact a lot of people's insurance if it does. And the final question is, well, really a comment. Would it be possible to list what the minimum lot size is for the public to know? Because I've heard a lot of discussion, and it seems like nobody's really willing to say what the exact lot size is. I've heard anywhere between a quarter acre down to a tenth of an acre. It would be nice for all of us to know what that really means, and then related to that, lot size, what would be the lot size for the properties that are facing Gain Street? It would seem to me that if there is going to be a adherence to the RPUD requirement, that at least those lots, at a very minimum, would have to be the quarter acre at a minimum. Anyway, thanks for your time. I don't know if those questions can be answered right away. I'm sure that I can be reached. My email address has been sent out to the commission. Thank you.
I'll try to answer your question about the flood. You're in an AE flood zone.
Say again?
AE flood zone
And
was the last map I saw. Now, they may have an updated map, but that's the last. And because of a development, it usually just doesn't change what the federal government has put on it. Now that I've said that, the federal government can change, as we know, the flood zones based on data that they receive. As for lot size, what I'm reading off of this paperwork is there's 132 lots, 50 feet wide lots, there's 59 of them. There's 73 lots of 40 foot. And if I'm looking, and the engineers can correct me, but I think the 50-foot lots are the lots that are on Gain Street. Is that right? Yes, sir. That's 50-foot lots on Gain Street. I hope that answers your question.
Is that the quarter acre? Is it the 50-foot designation that is in keeping with the RPUD?
It's been approved by the planning board. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I have a question about the buffer.
Yes, ma'am.
What's it made out of? What is the buffer that's going to be on Gaines?
The agreement that we had before during the 21 meeting was it was wooded.
Yes.
Okay.
That was the agreement that we did when we.
Is that still?
We don't know if that's still it.
This is Joe Schofield again. I don't want to sound like I'm dodging the question, and it kind of goes to I believe it's Mr. Tanner, attorney representing the residents' question about the applicant demonstrating compliance with the ordinance and things like that. So we don't have time to do that here. That's probably not the best use of the process, but what we've done is provided all of the required and supporting documentation to the city and their engineering consultants and to other state and non-state agencies who vet the material against the ordinance and the codes and the rules and the requirements. So the commissioners have a packet that has all of the information we believe necessary and appropriate to demonstrate that the owner has in fact met all the rules and their responsibilities based on the codes and ordinances. So we can't really speak to every detail here, and I hate to misspeak on any of the details, so I won't. I'll just say that the information that's being requested is probably somewhere in the packet. If not, I'm very happy to provide that information outside of this meeting.
Thank you. Call for the vote.
Commissioner Catagano.
No.
Commissioner Hyatt.
No.
Commissioner McGee.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lingle.
Yes.
Mayor Gibson.
Yes. Okay. The portion of the meeting that was quasi judicial is now terminated, and we'll move on to agenda items. Volusia County Sheriff, Sheriff Deputy Becker is in the house. Thank you, sir. Next thing is Jerome Adams, City Administrator Matters.
I think you're
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. The first item up is the statewide mutual agreement with the Volusia County Emergency Management. This is a document that allows the cities and the county to actually work together when there's a disaster to provide services to each other. This document is revised from the last time it was given, so this is just merely to sign a new document with pretty much the same agreement to provide and receive services when there is a disaster. And this is up for your approval, so if you're in agreement with it, to sign it, to provide service to the other cities and the counties.
Could be, if that's everything, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's everything.
Yeah, the mutual agreement.
Do we need consensus or a motion, Mr. Adams?
You need consensus right now so that I can bring it back to have it signed or adopted by resolution formally at the next meeting.
We want
Sounds
them.
good to me, yep.
We want them.
You have the consensus, unanimous.
Thank you, sir. The next thing is a website privacy policy. This is basically our policy, just letting residents know that there are times when information will be gathered when they visit our website. It's not going to be anything personally identifiable unless they're filling out a form that's on the website. It's required by state agencies that we keep track of the number of visits to our site for one of the reports that we have to do on an annual basis. This is just, again, to inform residents that there will be some information collected, again, not personally identifiable unless they provide it through a form that they're completing on the site. And this, again, is just needed by consensus to approve.
Consensus?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You have the consensus to proceed.
All right. Next one is the upcoming workshop that we'll be having on the 24th to discuss the sewer hookup and provide updates to residents, and also to discuss the contributions that the city will be offering to residents for hooking up to sewer.
This is the one at 4 o'clock?
It's at 5.
5.
5. Oh, even better.
It wasn't 5:30, it's always been 5.
Okay.
Under old business, sir, if you wish to proceed, this is the JBI irrigation addendum for the ball field, the irrigation item that we looked at the last time. They have resubmitted their quote to get the work done to do the irrigation work on the ball field. I'm not sure if the contractor is here, if you wish to speak on this item and answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Adams, I've got a question on this. It doesn't state anything about whether or not this includes the pumps. Is this just 2 wells?
Let me find my document here. Sorry, 1 second.
The estimate covers all plumbing to the new wells. Placed 30 feet apart. Sod.
It looks like it covers it
Yes,
all.
it said 2 new shallow wells. Covers all plumbing to new wells, restoration work. from replacing plumbing.
Yeah, everything is there and clear to me, or fairly clear to me, except I'm not sure that this includes the pumps. Or pumps in there. Are these submersible pumps, or is it a above ground centrifugal pump? You know, a couple of horse or something?
Anybody,
Steve, it doesn't say anything about pumps.
No, it doesn't say
No.
anything about that, so.
is there anybody here from JB on
I think we need to find out
it? There's
if
Don.
it includes pumps.
Here comes
The pumps
Don.
were included in the original bid. It was assumed at the time, unfortunately, that the wells were good, as we found out they're not, but the pump was always included in the original bid.
That's okay.
In the original bid, okay, okay.
So, okay, so this would include the pump, or
Yes,
pumps.
not the addendum, but the original bid had a pump in it.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay. And this is the
I have it all.
addendum.
okay.
Well,
So that makes a difference to me
Yep.
for the amount of money.
So this is a change order to the original?
To the original, yes.
3 items, 2 got
Okay.
passed. The last one.
I'm in favor to proceed.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Please
Thank you, sir.
proceed, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Resolution 2024, creating Charter Review Committee.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this is the resolution to formally create the Charter Review Committee and assign the members of the committee for your approval. Following that, I'll be setting a time for the committee to actually meet. They'll be having a workshop with Ken Parker from ICCMA just to review the duties of a Charter Review Committee. Following that, we'll have to set a schedule as far as when they meet, the questions that they will develop for the next election. It will have to come before the commission for approval, and then will have to be sent off to the supervisor of elections to get placed on the ballot. So I'll have to be developing a schedule as far as how soon they need to meet, how often they need to meet, when we need to have the questions before the commission, so that we are able to meet the deadline for the supervisor of elections.
We'll need a motion.
I'll make that motion. We approve resolution 2024-04 for the city commission to appoint a charter review committee, and we have the names.
A second.
We have a second. Discussion from the commission?
I have a comment. It was brought to my attention by Ms. Smothers that we have an even number of applicants on the committee. What would we do in case of a tie, of a dispute of whatever they're going to be
They're not
talking about?
voting on this, they're creating this.
Right,
We're the
they're
ones
not.
that are approve it.
Well, but they still have
Actually,
to
They gotta make a
discuss it
recommendation.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they do is with a charter review, and one of the things I was gonna suggest, at least for the initial meeting, it might be good that I attend and help explain to them what their role is and what the charter does along with Mr. Parker. What they do is they come up with the recommendations. Now, they can come up with recommendations on specific changes, or they could come up with a recommendation of a whole rewrite of the charter, which I think is the last one we did. But they can come up with specific questions, specific changes. And what's important, and trust me when I tell you, time is going to get short, real short. And odds are, I would wager, you won't make it. I'm just, I've seen these go down before, and usually they start more in advance because it's just, you have to come up with a ballot title and a ballot summary. And you have a limited number of words you can do that. Ballot title is 16 words, I think. Ballot summary is 70 or 75 words. That ballot summary has to have the substance of that ballot question. So if you get a bunch of questions, different changes, you either got to break it down to separate questions for each change, and then all of a sudden it can get expensive because if you go to the next ballot, because of the number of questions you have, the city pays the full cost of that ballot. So there's cost there to be incurred, and it's just time consuming to come up with the changes, to go through to come up with the changes, and then put it together in a form of a ballot summary with a ballot title, and then to get it before you, that has to be adopted by ordinance. And so, Jerome and I talked, I said, get with the supervisor of elections saying, what's the date you need this by? The supervisor elections, because that's our drop dead date.
Right.
And from there, we back up everything, and we basically, and you don't have to accept. It doesn't come to you for a rubber stamp. You could say, no, we ain't doing that, and that's fine. Or we'll take half of them, or we won't do these, or you can do them all. That's entirely up to you. You are not bound to accept their recommendation, but you need time to consider it, and you need time to adopt it. At least a month. Probably maybe a month and a half to 2 months. So we're in January. That's probably going to put you May. So they got February, March, and April to get you information, more or less. Because I think around mid-July is when is what they're going to tell us on the when they need it by. But Jerome can confirm that. If they can move it back, then that buys us some more time, but the time will go by very, very quickly. And so they need...
The primaries are in August, so
Yeah.
that has to be done before the primaries, or does it matter?
I'm going by the last time we did one in Lake Helen, and we had to have it in sometime in July.
Okay.
So
The conversation I had with the supervisor of elections, we had to have it ready before the primaries.
before the primaries.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're probably looking in July. So I would say use June and July for y'all to evaluate and consider adoption. If we have that kind of flexibility, so then they have to get it to you by the end of May.
Okay.
That may be how it all falls out, and I don't know how often they're going to meet, but what they're going to typically how this goes is they come up with ideas, then I draft up. I don't go to all the meetings. I draft it up. Say, all right, here's the language you've asked for, and then we will either put it in the form of a ballot title, ballot summary, present it all to you, or get it to you and then let you all decide the ballot title, ballot summary, one of those two things. But you're ultimately going to have to adopt an ordinance and send that to the supervisor of elections.
But you're okay with there being an even
Yeah,
number
so
of
that's
members
all right
on
to
it?
have-
If there's even number of board members, then it just comes back when it was split. We'll just tell you, this was split 6-6.
Yeah, they don't have to vote on it.
Yeah, it's just,
Right.
well, they need to vote, but if it goes 6-6,
Right.
we'll just say that there was no, it was 6-6, there wasn't a recommendation for or against on this particular question.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion on this.
I think,
Did we-
yeah, I think we have one.
Motion,
Got a
we just
motion?
We had ours
Just
in
need
a
to vote.
second.
Okay.
All right.
Call for
Mayor
the vote.
Gibson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Linlaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Catagano,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner McGee.
Yes.
Boards and committees, the next thing is PLDRC Harvey Martin's seat.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, this was brought before you at the last meeting, and it was asked to do some research to see what meetings Mr. Martin actually missed and bring it back to the commission for decision. So in your packet there, you'll see my transmittal, which has the meetings that he's missed for 2023. He missed 3 meetings in 2023. We also have some documents that I did not include that shows that he missed 2 more in 2022, I believe, and 2 in 2021. So the decision is yours to make whether you desire to maintain Mr. Martin on the committee or if you wish to remove him or appoint someone else. It's up to you.
If I could just add one thing, and you all probably discussed this, is the way it's worded, once a board member has 3 unexcused absences, they're off. They're not, so you're not removing somebody, he's off. The question is, do you want to put him back on?
Right.
Really, is the question. He's not on the board. Per our code, once you move, have 3 unexcused absence, which my understanding is the case. They don't have to be consecutive, just 3 unexcused absences. Then the vacancy has occurred. And then it's up to this body to fill it. And you can fill it back with that person if you so choose. That's your choice.
I have 2 comments for this agenda item.
Okay.
Gary Cummings?
And the other comment I would tell you, the 3 unexcused absence doesn't have to happen in 12 months, just 3. So it could be over 2 years, 3 years.
However
That's-
long he's on the board.
Yeah, now usually I would say, most of the cities I've seen do say so many unexcused absence over a particular period of time, but our code is not written that way.
Okay.
Derek Cummings, 131 White Street. Hello, citizens. How y'all doing? Okay, I want to clear something up. It's not my job, or it's not my place to. And then it was brought to my attention that someone said I was supposed to make sure they got the notice for the meeting. I got too much going on in my life to worry about trying to tell somebody when a meeting's going on. And this individual has been on the board 5 years. He ought to know when the meetings are. Is it my place to tell when the meetings are? Do you guys tell each one of y'all when the meetings are? That's no fair to me. Okay? I'm a straightforward person. I treat people how I want to be treated. But you're not going to throw my name under the bus and make me look like somebody that's bad. Don't be jealous of me because of my grandmother. You can't pick your relatives. You can't pick them. So what my grandmother did, I didn't tell her to do it. She did it out of the goodness of her heart. And she taught everybody in this city how to read and write. That wasn't my fault. So don't be jealous of me and try to throw me under the bus for something that I didn't say I was going to do. Because I never told nobody I'm going to tell you when the meetings are. You've been on the board longer than me. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Carrie Warning.
Carrie Warning, Indian Creek Road. You have 3 options here. Move them to an alternate, appoint someone new, or reappoint Harvey. At the last meeting, Denise came up and said that it was her duty to report that Harvey had missed 3 meetings, which she is 100% correct. But in 2022, Denise had 3 absences that were not excused: November 15th, October 13th, and June 16th. I don't believe she self-reported because I went back and I looked through all of the minutes in 2022 and I didn't see anything brought up. Both Denise and Harvey have been on this board for several years. And I don't think either should be removed just because of the 3 absent rule. But this commission finds Harvey and removes him for the 3-day rule, absent rule, then rightly so, you have to remove Denise for the 3 absent rule.
If that's the truth, go ahead and do it. I had 1 unexcused absence in the entire time I've been here.
Well, according to the minutes,
Well, I'm.
and I have a copy of the minutes. and-
No,
and-
Carrie, you address it to the commissioners, not to anybody else.
And like I said, I don't want to see either of them removed from the board. I realize, that you have an obligation and Denise isn't on this agenda package here. But my point is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Follow the rules equally across the board. And as the city attorney said, it doesn't say it has to be within a certain time frame. And if you want to look at the last 2 years, almost every one of our board members on the PLD have 2, with the exception of Denise and Harvey. So realistically, what you're saying is each one of them has 1 more absence, they can vacate their job. I'm just saying, be fair, be equal, and hopefully you make the right decision. But moreover, I think you should reappoint them both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
No, sir. I'm sure.
Commissioners?
Do we want them both back on?
There's only one case before you right now for action. Is this the one person? I heard that one person had 3 absences. It has to be unexcused absences. So I don't know if they're excused absences. I don't know what the
They were
details.
not, and I can't, I have.
Gary.
But it's, that issue's not before you. What's before you is this one particular board member.
I'd like to see Harvey left on the board.
Me too.
I would just make a motion to reappoint him then.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Further discussion?
That ordinance itself right here, I guess, section 24-157, 2, it's every board member's absence shall be approved or denied by the commission. I think that in that case, they're actually talking about the PLDRC board. And at the meeting that follows that, I don't know if any of that ever happened, or if, this whole thing followed like a normal procedure, or, I don't know. I'm just not sure, but that's in there though.
Yeah, there's a procedure for it to be excused. Right.
Gotcha. That's all I have.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, discussion? Call for the vote?
Mayor Gibson,
No.
Vice Mayor Linlaw,
No.
Commissioner McGee,
No.
Commissioner Hyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner Catalano.
Yes.
Motion to reappoint failed, 3-2. What's before us is the issue of Harvey Martin missing 3 meetings. We have an option to move up the alternate or appoint somebody new. Reappointment has failed, so do we have a motion with?
I make a motion that we appoint the alternate who has hopefully been in the meetings and is familiar with how things are going, and
Who is the alternate?
Derek Cummings.
Derry.
Is the-
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Call for the vote.
Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Linlaw,
yes.
Commissioner Catalano,
No.
Commissioner McGee,
Yes.
Commissioner Hyatt.
Yes.
Motion to appoint the alternate approved 4-1. The next thing on the agenda is Public Works Equipment Rental.
Oh, I think Mike Arman wanted to speak on behalf of the Economic Development Board.
I'll go after Yuri up there.
He wasn't listed?
No.
He wants to sit down. How do you feel about something non-controversial for a change?
Hallelujah.
Special request, we are suitably impressed by the air conditioning in this room. Can we back it off a little bit?
Yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
It's wonderful. It's a little too wonderful. Southeast Volusia Manufacturing and Technology Coalition, SEVMATEC, has an event which is tentatively scheduled for March 12th at the Brannan Center from 9 to noon. Mike Mullis from Mullis Site Selectors is going to give a seminar about what our business is looking for when they want to move to Southeast Volusia. All city people are invited. The public is invited. It looks like it's going to be $25 for breakfast and the use of the hall and so forth, I don't, at this point, know who gets in free, who rides free and who has to pay. I don't know yet. All I can tell you on that is stay tuned. I should have some more information for the next commission meeting. I will say, bring a sweater, because if you think it's cold in here, try the Brannan Center.
What was the
I
date
think
on
it'd be good for you to attend.
I'm going to be there.
Good.
March 12th, 9 to noon at Brannan. That's it.
Thank you.
You're up. Again.
Mr. Harmon, that's it?
That's it.
Oh,
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
yeah.
Do we need to authorize paying for his breakfast or whatever?
He didn't ask.
I don't know who gets in free, and I don't know who pays yet. It hasn't been settled.
It's up to you to let us know, I guess.
I don't know yet. They don't know yet.
Mr. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, the next item is rental of equipment for the Public Works Department, renting a lift, skid steer, sorry, and a grapple skid steer. Equipment used by the department to do such things as tree trimming, hanging or removing of banners. As you can see from the quote received, what it costs for 1 week is half of what it costs for a month. So we're going ahead with a month that would give them enough time to do whatever necessary in all the parks and all the areas around the city. So with that, I would ask your approval to encumber these funds from their account, from their fund, to rent the equipment.
Do you need a motion or consensus?
Consensus, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Proceed. All right, comments and concerns from commissioners. Commissioner Hyatt?
Friends of the Library will be having their second concert in the winter series on the 4th of February, and it's around 3 o'clock. Bring a chair. That's all.
To Mr. Catagono?
Just want to compliment Drew Ann Welch on the great job she did at the Saints and Sinners Cemetery. It was an excellent event.
She did. She did.
That's it.
Commissioner
Yeah, I would
McGee?
like to echo that. That was a very nice ceremony up there. It was very moving. There was it was very impressive.
It was.
Right, and I hope that we can recognize our other veterans and first responders and things in an appropriate manner. But that was a very nice ceremony. So thank you, Drew Ann, and those that
Thank you, Drew
worked very
Ann.
hard to make that happen.
Vice Mayor?
I also want to say the same thing. I wish I could have made it, but unfortunately I was very sick that weekend. Spent the weekend on the couch, which was very unpleasant. I called Don Bell Signs this morning and talked to Ron because the lights are still not on the sign on the south end. And he said he was going to call me back right after I talked to him, and I haven't heard back from him yet, so we'll see. Not a big surprise. And that's all I have.
Mr. Adams, did Leaf get the okay to fix the speed limit sign next to the church?
Yes, he did, Mr. Mayor. The part's been ordered and it should be received pretty quickly so he can get that installed.
Thank you. Any other comments or concerns from the citizens before we adjourn? Seeing none, meeting's adjourned. Everybody be careful going home.
So, it fails. Yep.